One of the greatest violinists after Paganini was the famous Norwegian Ole Bull. And this violin that he owned and played upon is one of Antonio Stradivari's finest creations. From the flowing, elaborate scroll all the way down to the button, it is as highly inlaid and embellished as any instrument the master ever made. This old videotape was taken in 1993, along with these others, while on one of my early adventures visiting with and playing upon master violins. And even though most of the footage was taken with the violin in one hand and a camcorder in the other, while trying to be careful, I've now come to realize that it's almost impossible to find any up-close views of almost any truly fine violin. And I will make it a priority to do more of them in the future. Because when you watch someone play a Stradivarius on stage, even if the camera zooms in, it's nothing like seeing the instrument up close and at different angles. So hopefully, this video will help people appreciate the skill, talent, and the art of Antonio Stradivari just a little bit more. A simple violin scroll is a work of art, yet Antonio Stradivari decided to take things to a higher level 10 years after completing his apprenticeship with Niccolo Amati. The tone and finish of his instruments were already considered greater than those of his masters, yet Antonio was always looking for a way to give his customers, who could afford anything, that something more. And to accomplish this, he decided to reach back in time to the two original master luthiers, Andrea Amati and Gaspar da Salo, for inspiration. He then began engraving his finest violins with a technique that he learned from a local cabinet maker that involved precisely cutting patterns into the wood and then filling them with finely powdered ebony dust mixed with glue. In a way, this was a second apprenticeship for Antonio, even though he had already achieved the title of Master Luthier. As is true with almost all of Stradivari's instruments that survive today, the pegs, nut, and fingerboard are not original and were believed to have been quite elaborate. There isn't a lot of wear on the scroll, just enough to remove the black ink that once embellished the chamfers. The neck was replaced in the first half of the 1800s, and this small part of the inlay on the side of the neck with a slightly different color is not original. But the rest is, and wow. It's always amazed me how what I consider to be the most beautiful views of master violins is almost never shown in any pictures. And pardon how this goes in and out of focus sometimes, but I wanted to remember just how beautiful these ribs really are, all the way around. And since this video is such an early one and moves around so much, I've decided to stop for a second on each important view. And this next view of how the F-hole flows across the arching is very important to both the violin maker and connoisseur. The chin rest and tailpiece have also been replaced, and Stradivari usually only cut his saddles halfway through the edge of the belly, unlike this one. But unlike the other items I've already mentioned, most of these items commonly do get replaced, sometimes by each new owner. It is beautiful from every angle, and it's just as wonderful to play, especially after pulling the top of the bridge back the way it should be. Yet I did take a couple hours out while visiting with it for a couple days to measure the thickness of the belly and the back. And yes, Ole Bull regraduated the belly and the back, as he did on many of his instruments. A few Stradivaris have actually been improved by this operation, while so many others have been damaged forever. The belly isn't that thin, yet you can see that over the centuries the arching and upper F-hole wing are beginning to sink just a little bit. Hopefully I'm not getting too technical while admiring such a beautiful work of art. Yet, after all, I am above all else a master luthier. And I admire the amount of time and effort that Stradivari spent making one of his greatest masterpieces. Stradivarius had almost infinite patience, and he went all out on this embellished double purfling and edgework. This requires inlaying 2 complete sets of very delicate narrow purfling, then carefully removing the maple between them to the perfect depth. Next, accurately cutting round and diamond-shaped lozenges to the perfect thickness and gluing them all in their perfect place. There we go. Could there be a more elegant, beautiful corner? After the ivory is in place, just like the inlay of the scroll and ribs, Stradivarius filled in around them with powdered ebony dust. Then he smoothed all of the surfaces together to perfection. And here it is for us to enjoy and appreciate almost 350 years later. Stradivarius had others help him on many of his later instruments, but everything here was done entirely by the master, and it shows. As with so many fine instruments that actually get played, this is in dire need of a little French polish around the edges to help preserve it for future generations. Once again, musicians and owners, please watch all of my videos on how to care for your instruments. Doing so can save you so much grief and regret later on. When it comes to Stradivari's violins, it's amazing how far off the color is in most photographs. So much so that many musicians don't even recognize the instrument they've been dreaming about their entire life when they actually see it for the very first time. It takes one of these Kodak color bars in the picture to balance the colors and see what the color of the instrument truly is. And when it comes to the shape and form of a fine violin, I find that a reflection is worth 1,000 words. You can also see how the flames in the wood create ripples that show in the reflections. Stradivari achieved this effect by finish scraping the surface of the curly maple lengthwise, and he did it just the right amount so that this instrument has the perfect balance of finesse and flavor. This next shot is to show the typical arching and form of Stradivari's backs during the 1680s, since it is so rarely seen. When you shine a bright light on the famous Cremonese varnish, it completely changes color and comes to life. The belly of the Ole Bull is truly rare. Not better or worse, just unbelievably rare, because it was made from a single piece of spruce without a joint down the center, unlike almost every other master violin ever made. And here again, each reflection truly does say 1,000 beautiful words. The sculpting on the belly is magnificent, and in and of itself, a true work of art.